Good morning. My name is Ben Evans. I am the president of Audit Solutions. And today I'm very excited to be sitting with Jason Henbest, who is a director at Walmart within the procurement department. As a little bit of an introduction to Jason, and I'll let him finish this introduction. He's been with Walmart for over 29 years, so definitely a Walmart lifer. And a real focus for the conversation today is what Jason's been up to recently. In the last few years, Jason has helped to implement and build a supplier audit program within the procurement department. This supplier audit program focuses on indirect suppliers. Jason leads a team of multiple resources that look to identify suppliers for audit and then support outside firms such as Auditech in the process of these audits. Again, super excited and grateful that Jason has been willing to meet with us today. I will stop talking and turn the time over to Jason. And maybe just to start this discussion off, Jason, would you mind introducing yourself and adding any additional context I may have missed in your introduction?
You bet. Well, thank you, Ben. Happy to do it. So I started with Walmart 29 years ago as an hourly associate in our IT department. Worked in an area we called the tape library. So lots of magnetic tapes and loading tapes into IBM drives and things like that. So started there, moved to a lot of different kind of help desk areas within the IT space too, some PC help desk and system support calls there. Got to learn a lot about the business that way. And then kind of moved into our procurement team and the contract management, did some inventory management, and now most recently with the post-payment audit group.
Great. Can you expand a little bit more on that team you're currently leading right now? So what's your current role? How is your team structured? How are you approaching this task of managing the large amount of contracts and suppliers from a spend perspective at Walmart?
You bet. So my team's got responsibility for the post-payment audit of our indirect spend, the suppliers that sit in the indirect spend space. We sit in the same group with our procure to pay. So neighbors with our procurement team, accounts payable team, we're all in the same family here. And so my team is structured. I've got 8 folks on my team that basically manage the audits as they move through the process. So we're engaging taking an assessment of the supplier, what's the right supplier to audit at the right time, working with our business contacts, the decision makers, if you will, with those relationships, aligning with them, and then managing the audit, the relationship with Auditech as the audit kind of goes through the flow up to the settlement.
Great. Thanks. So I guess the next question would be, as you embarked in this process, so Walmart's invested in conducting these supplier audits within the procurement department. As that was being decided, what were the main drivers? What made Walmart decide to focus on this as an initiative and invest time in it?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. So with a large company and different areas and some aspects operating in different ways when it came to their procurement activities and contract negotiations and such, and even invoice review could look different in some areas than it does in others. And honestly, we had one group that had looked into kind of take a sharper look, if you will, at invoicing and kind of were we getting what we paid for. And as you start to uncover a couple of instances where maybe that didn't go exactly as we had expected or designed, in the contract, then it gets interest real quick and it just kind of expands, right? Like where else could this be happening? So we started expanding on it, honestly, at that point. And again, it kind of gains momentum once you start to uncover some things, you go, okay, where else do we need to be looking? And it continues to make sense to dig deeper, as you start to uncover some of those things.
That's great. So to restate kind of what you're saying there, at the beginning of this program, you're starting to see instances where maybe you're not getting exactly what you've negotiated, what you've agreed to. And there's the decision to, hey, let's roll this out and look across different areas to ensure that we're getting what we paid for, or we're paying for what we agreed to, right?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. And as you move forward, so to summarize that, it sounds like payment accuracy, making sure we got billed right was the key driver. As you started down the road in this program, and I've worked with these for some time, so this is somewhat of a leading question because we've had discussions around this. But as you started down the road in this program, what are some other benefits that came up that you weren't really focused on, but maybe became more valuable and more important as the program grew?
Right. No, great point. Yeah, we were expecting, you can expect to see that, maybe you were overcharged a predetermined rate, an hourly rate that was charged high, or a freight markup was higher than anticipated. But what we started to see was benefits other parts of the business were adding to their contracts that not everyone was aware of, or not everyone was using. So now you start to, one department learns from another. Hey, this is a contract term that makes a lot of sense. Why don't we have it also? And so you quickly start to kind of compound your learnings, if you will. It starts to snowball and say, okay, I can take all the good pieces and really start to tighten these up. So we had that kind of benefit. What could we just learn internally, between teams was certainly a benefit. And then it kind of preps you for not repeating that same problem. Right now, I've found a problem. I've recovered the overcharge, and now I can tighten up my contract language or an operational procedure, that prevents that from happening again. So there's that immediate return, but then the savings going forward that you won't overpay.
That's a great perspective. So in addition to making sure that you were billed correctly and remedying any instances where you were not billed correctly, you're able to cross-pollinate is the term I guess I would use.
Yeah, great.
Between different departments. You have organization the size of Walmart, you're going to have IT teams, you have facilities teams, construction teams, and really an infinite number of additional categories. And there may be best practices that are within certain sections of the organization that aren't being employed across, and you're acting as almost that pollination mechanism to make sure best practices are spreading from a contract perspective.
Absolutely.
Fair to say. Okay. And
Well said.
and then the other item that you've stated is just future value, not just ensuring that I was billed in line with my agreements, but then fixing either agreements or operational processes to make sure that you're billed correctly moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just to be fair and even-handed, what are some of the things? I mean, so you walk into this program saying, "Hey, we want to get back money where we weren't billed what we were supposed to be." You found out as you kind of began down that process, hey, there's benefit here with cross-pollination from department to department. There's benefit in future cost savings. What are some of the challenges that came up? Some of the things that when you started, you didn't anticipate would be there that have existed.
Yeah, another great point. I say you see lots of, just quite honestly, an honest mistake on the supplier side too. So we approach all of these. We get in the conversation and say, we're not out to get someone. We're not out to, call someone out and make an example of them by any means. It's honestly, we're trying to validate that everything has transpired just like we described and just as both companies intended, right, when they entered the contract. So we put the supplier at ease. We're just trying to validate everything happened as we both expected. So there's, I'm not everyone's favorite phone call, right, or email when the audit, but I try to turn that conversation too, in that I can show internally that you're a great partner for our company as well, right? We go through an audit, everything has happened exactly as we had intended, or even with some, minor differences, which again, sometimes it's honest mistake. It's an accounting mistake on their end or a misinterpretation, and they happen. Um, they don't always go like that. I mean, you can have some disputes, honestly, disagreements in contract, and that does happen. But we, what we try to do is the data tell the story, right? Try to take the emotion out of it. The data tells the story. So let that. That's what we're trying to get to. Did everything happen like we expected? So there's certainly challenges in that. I would say internally also, sometimes it's not what everyone's got top of mind to go have a tight review of their supplier and how everything's happened. Sometimes my business partners think I'm kind of auditing their business, and it can be some of that. We're just trying to validate that everything happened like we expected. And at the end of the day, honestly, you want to know where the problems are so you can fix them. Again, a lot of times they're an honest mistake. It was inadvertent whoops, I call it. It happens.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you touched on something I wanted to talk about as well. So, and I know that as you've moved forward in this program, one of your key roles has been evangelizing this throughout your organization, making sure when you're moving into a new area that's being audited, whether it's, IT or construction or facilities, a new category, you are bringing key stakeholders within Walmart along and in determining whether or not it makes sense to conduct supplier audits in that area. And you just referenced that. How do you approach that? I mean, how do you approach that with, I'm sure you have just a whole myriad of varying responses, and how do you approach, the different types of responses you get?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that's true. Lots of different responses. So obviously we show quickly to the partners, here's the benefit, right? We're gonna do the work. My team's gonna go do this work. We're gonna partner with the audit tech. We'll do all the heavy lifting and working through this process. We try to be as little as a time burden as possible on the stakeholder because they've got a business to go run. So it's important to keep the communication with them through the process, but to try to be as little of a time burden on them and the supplier as necessary, that we're going to go do that work. And so we approach that with, we're going to do the work, we're going to provide the benefit, we're going to show you, again, where your solid partners are. They're operating as we expected, and not just in an operational sense, but in their accounting procedures and things like that. Everything's going like we expected. So you're going to know, you'll be able to rank your suppliers, if you will, at the end and say, here's who's a great partner to us, and everything's gone just as we planned. Sometimes it's not the right time to audit. We'll have that approach to say, this may be better done next quarter, or, just things come up. So we certainly have that response at times. But I try to assure them, hey, we're all working for the same company here. We're trying to make sure everything went as we expected. And at the end of the day, we may have a recovery, and if nothing else, we're going to learn some things. Do we have a very solid partner, or do we have some gaps we kind of need to tighten up?
Great. So another question kind of down that same avenue, is a procurement department at a large organization, lots of things you could be doing with your time. I think especially in 2020, but even before then, organizations are asking people in procurement and other departments to do more with less resources than they ever have. Why do supplier audits? Why invest the time and effort into supplier audits as opposed to some other initiative? Why did Walmart make that determination as, hey, this is something worth investing our limited, not unlimited resources in to take a look at?
No, that's a true point. That's a great point. You have lots of things going on in the procurement space, and this one made sense in that we're basically a self-sustained model, right? So the recoveries um, cover the cost of my team to operate, and then some, right? So there's a benefit to the company in all of this. That the cost of my team operating, um, we're covering that with the recoveries and then some. So it, from a financial standpoint, from that view, it makes sense. And again, it's hard to measure what you're not going to pay later as you correct these things going forward, because that's what you want. You don't want the issues to repeat. So that's usually enough of a sell internally. The finance folks like that, leadership likes that. Hey, this is a self-sustained model and then some, and I'll prevent loss down the road. Okay, what do you need from me is honestly usually the answer that we get. So that and it made sense for us to set it right with the procurement team and our accounts payable team, because we leverage those teams a lot to help us in looking at purchase orders and invoicing and things like that. So it makes sense for us to work closely together.
That's a great point of differentiation. So as you're looking at multiple options you could be spending time into, one of the things that drove Walmart to take this path was this one pays for itself. That in the course of accomplishing all the benefits that you've listed today, you're also recovering hard dollars and are able to use those dollars to cover the costs of the resources at Walmart that perform the work. So,
yeah.
And again, in 2020, that's more relevant than it was even before. So, so you've mentioned, you just a little more background. You have internal team members that are performing this work. You're also employing the use of outside firms. Can you talk through that? Why is Walmart using outside firms? How has that proved beneficial, and how have you approached it?
Yeah, so it's very handy to know what you don't know, and so we found with the leverage with with Auditex, there's an expertise there across the board in markets where we don't know, where to go look for where there's a potential risk. So there's a lot of value in that. Again, I don't know how to say it. It's handy to know what you don't know, and when you can leverage that expertise, and then the ability to what I call do that in the weeds, the heavy lifting, very detailed work, which Auditech provides. So that was certainly beneficial for us too, and then it's beneficial too for our business partners to see that also coming from, hey, this is a professional audit firm, and this is what their findings are, and this is what they presented to us, and that proves beneficial as well.
Great. Yeah, and just some background maybe I could have started with is, the way that this is operating at Walmart is there's internal resources and internal team that Jason leads that, again, evangelize this program throughout the organization, act as a safety net. If there are any issues that are being escalated by a supplier, they have a team within the procurement department that they can reach out to and address those with, and help to make sure we're talking to the right people, that the outside firms are talking to the right people. And so when findings come out on these suppliers, you have both a Walmart side resource, and to Jason's point, an outside resource being able to confirm, hey, this looks like an issue. This is what the data says. How do we want to approach this? So I think that's a good approach. So
yeah, I like to think of my team pretty much like a project manager, several project managers managing a project as each audit, because there are lots of different conversations to kind of have along the way. You've got your with all the different players involved in the audit, right? I've got my audit firm and my supplier and my stakeholders, the decision makers in the business, maybe even our own finance group at times. And so my team kind of manages that audit as it moves through, which can be varying groups and different conversations along the way.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. So again, just kind of natural progression there. If looking outside of Walmart, so if you're talking to a procurement professional that's considering doing this work and considering employing an outside firm, what are some of the things you'd advise them? Because you've worked with multiple outside firms for a number of years now, on a ton of projects. What would you advise them to look for? What would you advise them to avoid?
That was a great point. No, that's true. No, it had lots of those types of conversations. At the heart of it, I would say have them speak to the kinds of things that they're finding. Maybe not necessarily specific by supplier, but the types of findings that they're uncovering. And is that relative to your business also? You can tell pretty quickly at that point, I think, how I would say experienced they are, how knowledgeable they are of your of the market that you're in. Would you start to ask them, okay, what types of things have you found? And I would ask, kind of how do they get to those details? What are their percentages in recoveries, right, as compared to spend? What's their typical recovery rate and things like that. That will start to I think separate the groups some. But that's my thoughts there, kind of that what are they finding, how much are they finding, and how do they do it?
Yeah, and I'm sure through having those discussions, you're able to assess expertise and comfort within, what they know what they're doing or not.
Yeah,
Great.
Absolutely.
Okay. What's your overall experience been with Audit Tech? So how have, we've been working together for some time now. And would you recommend them to an outside company or contact?
Yes, absolutely. No, I very much appreciate the partnership with Audit Tech for sure. What I like is we have lots of different business areas, right? So there's still lots of, honestly, still some new ground to get into when it comes to indirect spend. I think you'll find, as opposed to the direct spend suppliers, the indirect, there's not as much post-payment contract compliance type audits going on. So honestly, lots of times I have to kick things over to you guys and say, is this an area, right? Is there risk here? Should we go do this? Should we not go do this? So we've got a partnership there, relationship that we can kind of bounce those things off each other. Does this make sense to go do, and why not? And even when it's why not, we've just learned something there too. So, right, I can take that back too as a learning, right? There's a lot of spend here. It may not be fruitful to pursue an audit, and here's what we learned. So I certainly appreciate that. And like I said, you guys do great work for us, and honestly, you're helping us understand how things are going too. That certainly happens from time to time. Here's what we found and things. So very much like that as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Jason. So we talked before, if you're talking to an outside procurement professional about selecting a firm, what would you tell them to look for? Along that same vein, if you're talking to another procurement professional, a different organization that's maybe leaning towards or maybe slightly leaning away from conducting supplier audits, implementing a similar program within their organization, within their procurement department that Walmart has within their procurement department, what would you tell that individual? What would be some of the things you'd focus on?
Right. Oh, to get started up. Yeah.
There's
two major points there. One is, where are your contracts? And that It sounds simple enough.
Yeah.
It sounds simple enough, and in some areas, it's not quite that simple. Where are your contracts? Do you have easy access to them? Are they all electronically stored, et cetera? And you can get to them and all those kinds of things. That's a starting point. You want to get that lined out first, if not, or at least that's the starting point there. And then you want to start aligning with those decision makers in the business that own the relationship with those suppliers. They are going to be the key to how successful and how quickly, honestly, the audit will move along. So whoever in the company is responsible for that relationship with that supplier, you want to get on board with them quickly. Explain what your intentions are, what the benefits are, what you hope to then learn from the process as well, and you want to have communication with that group early and often, and I would say at as high a level as you feel appropriate. Because you'll gain support in that. I think, like I said, finance groups, leadership, they like to see that benefit. So you're gonna get the buy-in there, but you want that person that ultimately owns the relationship with the supplier.
I think that's a great call out. Making sure that you are talking to the right people at the right level, so that this isn't a surprise to anyone as the work moves forward. So again, I do want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know how many calls and discussions you have during the week, or I probably don't know. I know a fraction of it, and it still makes me very appreciative. But closing remarks, understanding the audience for this discussion is other procurement professionals. Any other call outs or closing remarks you'd have before we let you get back to your day job?
Yeah, you bet. No, I'm happy to do it. But yeah, I find some phrases I'm repeating to my team a lot that kind of just keep me moving. It can be not the most fun thing to go do. So I think I said earlier, let the data tell the story. Let the data tell the story. At the end of the day, you're just trying to validate that everything happened, quite honestly, like both companies had committed to when they signed the agreement. And that's all you're trying to do. And you're gonna benefit from that financially, short term and long term. And also you're gonna find out who the solid partners are for your company, which to me says we're both just trying to work together and continue to make money for both of us. So let's just continue to do that.
Great. Well, again, thank you so much, Jason. It's a Friday morning / almost afternoon. So very grateful for your time today, and we'll give you your day back.
All right. Happy to do it. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Jason. Bye.
Bye, guys.